assets discussed on this call, and all of our private placements, including Grayscale DeFi Fund, are available only to accredited investors. So with that, let's get into the questions. First question. So welcome. Thanks again for joining us, Tyler. Can you give us some background on yourself and how Flexa came to be created? What problem are you aiming to solve? And what were the early days like? What was it like in the beginning? Bring us on your journey.
All right. That's easy. I'd love to do that. And there were a few questions in there. One thing in starting off, I just do want to say from everyone in like the AMP community and Flexa, just even thank you and Grayscale for just the approach that you've had over the years. This is very significant and meaningful within our industry. It's over the past, I've been in crypto for a little more than 11 years. There's a lot of ability to take shortcuts and do things in quick and easy ways and not have really long-term focus. And you guys have really skirted that and done it in a very positive just way in what you've grown the company. So thank you so much for that, the opportunity and everything you guys are just doing in general. So I want to lead with that. It's very much aligned in kind of our philosophies. And so, man, where to begin? Starting off with Flexa, there are 4 co-founders, all with pretty deep payment experience. And the number one thing that we wanted to solve and we think absolutely needs to be solved, it's purely just about payment expense. So retail payment expense. If you're buying something at a store, online or otherwise, the cost of that transaction, literally just to facilitate the exchange of money, is incredibly expensive. And that cost manifests in all sorts of different ways, not only just the transaction, literally the transaction cost itself, but other things like fraud, for instance, and the prevalence of fraud, given the insecurity of a lot of these payment methods. You add it all up together, and it turns out to be a very, very significant number. Even looking at things, we quote regularly, the Kansas City Fed in the US published a paper, deep, long paper about the cost, opportunity cost and social cost of payments. And they estimated it's literally at 2% of the US GDP, which is completely absurd. When you look at the defense budget of the United States, it's 3%. So that's literally the sort of numbers that we're talking about. And so that is our goal, without a doubt, is minimizing that cost to be as absolutely low as possible. And we would be willing to do it in whatever means necessary. It just so happens, as we've been thinking about this problem, what it could look like to actually solve it. It turns out there's these new crypto networks, particularly Ethereum, which is the one that we then use, which allows us to have a collateral system, a smart contract system, tokens that now enable something like Flexa to exist for the very first time. So this is very much, despite our love of crypto, and I mentioned myself and an avid user of crypto, this was not we want to create a crypto project to solve some problem. This was, we're going to solve a problem. It turns out that crypto has literally enabled us to do it for the first time. So that's really the passion, how we all kind of sort of rallied around this problem in the team. And yeah, we've sort of had the core idea from the very beginning. So there weren't any really changes, let's say, to the overall mission. We knew the mission, we knew how we would get there. We knew we had to build this sort of a network. All the sort of parameters we generally knew. But what I will say has been the most fascinating piece sort of around the journey is how much in crypto we take for granted now. I can still, as I think about this question, rewind back. One of our co-founders, Zach, actually, he came up with this concept of stake pools early on. And that was something that now seems to be the most straightforward concept. Of course, you can take assets and put them into some sort of safe staking contract, and they could be used for other things and measured in the state of that app. That was not a thing 4 years ago. So we've evolved so much to where that's just like now a straightforward concept or straightforward contracts. Even something like I still remember debating internally about liquidity pools when we were thinking about having a decentralized system for having assets in some sort of a liquidity pool. Again, that was not a thing 3-4 years ago, and now clearly it is. And not only is that a thing, but there's lots of other mechanisms that are utilizing that and optimizing it, and even words that I don't even understand anymore that are getting implemented in these sorts of technologies. So that's the really cool thing, I think, is how quickly some of that has really advanced.
So digging in a little bit, what exactly is Flexa and how does it work? And this is my favorite question. Can you explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old?
I'll start there, which is actually not, it's relatively straightforward. It would be to a 5-year-old, you have some money, you get to go to the store and you buy something with it. And that's really it. And we would define money as whatever asset you might have. It could be your phone, something on your phone. It could be points, it could be dollars, it could be crypto, it could be something like that. So to the 5-year-old, say, there's your money, that's the number, there's 5 of those. You can go to the store and use those 5 units to buy something that you want to take home. And I would say that's the simplest way of describing Flexa, and that's actually true, and that's how it works today. And that's a very real assessment. There's obviously lots and lots behind the scenes to enable that. But then Flexa in general is a payments network. So it's an all digital payments network that connects now to ideally all merchant point of sale, hardware, software, online, individual applications online. It could be online platforms. It could be basically anything that a merchant can accept a payment from. And then we open up an API SDK access to the network. So any app in the world can now pay using Flexa. So really without limitation. So any app that you would have, that you open up your phone, you look, and there's some apps on your phone, going into the store or online, using those apps to buy something natively is what Flexa wants to facilitate, and does facilitate now. It doesn't have everything yet, but we have the plan for that, and so we're making progress towards that. But that's really what Flexa is. So it's taking whatever asset you have on your phone, whatever app, going into a store online, presenting a code or scanning a code, and just really that simple. So really honing that user experience of the dead simple approach. There's no entering numbers, there's no swiping different things, there's no going back and forth between menus or trying to figure different things out. It's just that straightforward of scanning a code and walking out the door.
Great explanation. So where does AMP fit in? Where does the token fit in? How is it used on the network?
Yeah, so the good news, I guess there's, in describing all this, everything I just said was 100% kind of as it is. It works that way. And if you want to participate in the network, so as a payment service provider, as a hardware provider, as a merchant, as a user, so any of the above, you literally don't need to know anything about AMP whatsoever. So we can almost stop the conversation there, and we can say, merchants, you will get paid in fiat currency or local currency or crypto if you want, or any asset you want. All these transactions are going to come in. They're going to be instantaneous, in store, no chargebacks, right? The whole gamut, all of that stuff. Basically, the entire presentation around what Flexa is, why it's valuable to a user, a wallet, or a merchant. You don't even need to know anything about AMP, or frankly, really even care. You can, it's actually very positive to the network, but you don't have to. So that's a real key differentiation I want to make even from the very beginning. But so now, just saying all that, AMP is actually the most critical piece. So I mentioned at the very beginning how we couldn't even do any of this without Ethereum or these new technologies, and that's very, very true. So at the face of it, it looks just like anything else. It's really simple, easy to use and that. But because the network is open, we let any wallet connect to it and any type of asset get paid into it, which means that there would be rampant fraud or assets that could be double spent or assets that never clear or fully settle, and all different types of components of the network would have to deal with that. And it frankly can't. If we want to have any wallet in a permissionless way or any of these assets, it's frankly impossible to try to actually set up the right parameters for all of that. So what we do is all of the apps themselves have a collateral pool and they stake AMP into it. So just a smart contract on Ethereum currently. And let's say it's $100,000 worth of collateral. That means the network says all of your users can spend up to $100,000 of unconfirmed transactions, whatever those look like. So maybe it's a Bitcoin, which might take an hour to fully settle on chain. As we move forward, there could be things like ACH payments in the United States that might take up to 45 days to clear, which is a lot longer. So, and everything else in between. So the collateral basically serves for all these wallets to permissionlessly access the network. And the network can kind of just, I don't want to call it dumb, but it can be dumb. It doesn't need to have all this other logic. Things can connect into it, they can pay into it. And the collateral mechanism is 100% critical to enable that and provide the game theory to not have all of these wallets or users or other even integrations cheat. So the integrity of the network is maintained. So that's kind of the technical feasibility. This could never exist without AMP. And then the secondary piece, which really then provides the engine for the growth of the network and also the selfish motivation of the network, which is all the proceeds that Flexa generates, it purchases AMP and then distributes it back to the people providing the collateral in the first place. So what that means is if you're providing collateral, you earn all of the fees in the network. So you're taking the risk, you're basically providing the collateral into these transactions, basically decentralizing the risk in the transactions, and you're earning all of the fees, which is also just a really interesting incentive mechanism. And then not only that, we all know the elephant in the room of that the competitors here are two of the largest companies in the entire world with almost more resources than anything that you can imagine. We're really competing now through a different business model. And this business model now not only has this collateral mechanism, but it's distributed among the users of the network as like more of a cooperative model. So it's the users and the participants and the people taking the risk. So that's why we sometimes people ask, if we actually are a DeFi project or a DeFi protocol or a token, we say wholeheartedly yes, because that's the lifeblood of how this all works, and that it is a decentralized system, and that all the users, the participants are the ones securing the network, and then they're the one earning all of the rewards in the network too. So that's really exciting to see how that's evolving and the participation and being able to now be involved, whether you are a wallet, a user, or otherwise. That's been really exciting to see the growth that we've had there too.
Definitely. And if I did want to think about AMP as a token, how would I think about it? How does it come into existence? What does the supply schedule look like? How do I think about the tokenomics?
Yeah, so there we wanted to make it as in the same theme, as absolutely simple as possible. So literally the simplest. So first off, there's just a fixed supply. So there's 100 billion tokens, and that is it. There will never be more created. There's no native burn function or anything else like that. So that is the way that it will always be. Very straightforward, totally immutable contract, no admin permissions. So there's no even way to try to vote or even change the contract itself. So that is what it is. And then we've talked about where all those tokens have sort of gone. The majority of them are going to go to the people using the network. So it's the payment service providers, it's the merchants, it's the wallets. We have various grant programs set up where we're releasing them. We've sold some of the tokens strategically to the right partners to ensure that they're in from the very, very beginning. And then also then they're staking the tokens. So you see a very high percentage of the amount of tokens available that are staked because they are sold, granted, given to the people that are literally using the network itself. So it's pretty straightforward there. And then the economics or the tokenomics, as I sort of described, it's that very straightforward mechanism. Whenever there's fees associated in a Flexa transaction, some of those tokens are now purchased. Right now, it's done through centralized exchanges, but we would absolutely look to be converting that to a publicly viewable, decentralized, some sort of a ledger where everyone can then see the transactions and verify everything in and out. But we're waiting on that, again, just because the technology advances quickly. and we would likely employ some sort of zero knowledge scheme, so it's not easy to know what merchants are, what their volumes are, and what they might be selling or where they are. So very privacy preserving, not only to the users but the merchants. So we would look to employ something like that, where you'd be able to trustlessly prove the amount went in and that the rewards are correct without necessarily knowing the numbers. And so yeah, and that's really it. It's literally that straightforward. And then when we talk about what AMP is, it's just a collateral token, and that is its 100% focused purpose and nothing else. So there really is no other. I mean, everyone can invent other uses or use kind of assets or tokens however they want. It's a permissionless system, but it truly is designed to be what we believe just an ideal form of collateral that can be used to now back and secure this network for years and years, and hopefully decades and decades to come, with really, really considerable growth.
So you've mentioned the merchants and the users. I want to talk more about both. And I love polls, and I would like to do a quick poll before we do that. So everybody, I'm launching this poll. Hopefully you can see it. What is the largest financial institution, excuse me, in which country has partnered with Flexa? Mexico, France, El Salvador, or Canada? I'll give people a second to put in their answers. Okay, so most people say El Salvador.
Most people would be right.
These are the results. 82% were right. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and that quick story too is that again, we never set out to say, hey, we're going to go try to change payments or build all this financial infrastructure for a country in Central America. I mean, sure, we'd love to do things, but that was never part of the roadmap or the plan. But merchants there came to us. So merchants that we're working with in the US that we've had very long and deep relationships with from the very beginning of Flexa said, hey, this is happening in El Salvador. We're going to need all this new type of acceptance. Bitcoin is, legal tender. We have no preparation whatsoever to do this. Can you please do it for us? And so in setting all of that up and in digging a little deeper, we realized what the banking infrastructure was like. And then not only that, a huge appetite for the larger banks, largest banks in El Salvador to work with us so we can actually build Bitcoin acceptance for them. And so now in El Salvador, you can pay your bills, you can deposit Bitcoin into your bank account, you can pay off your credit card, you can send money to your friends, all using Bitcoin and Flexa behind the scenes, which is really cool. So just showing the real use case of this is a very real thing now. Even in a smaller country, the real use and the impact that we're seeing around that has just been phenomenal, and that it's working too. That's the other thing. Like, as even a technical experiment, it's literally working, and we have these integrations, and we get to see these transactions of people literally buying things and interacting with digital assets that is probably unfathomable 10 years ago. So it's a really exciting point for us to be able to start with, and obviously quite a few other countries we've been talking to now about doing something similar, and now we have this great test case of how to do it. Also, I went in my little diatribe at the beginning, thanking Grayscale, but even then doing this in a compliant way. We didn't cut corners. We worked with the agencies there to make sure we had the right licensing, the right structure set up to do this in a very long-term sustainable way. We weren't just going to go down there and try to get pressed for a year or a month and say, oh, we helped this, we're just going to abandon this. So we invested very seriously, set up the right entities, worked with the right people on the ground to make this really compliant and sustainable for the long term. And it's an ongoing relationship too. We're in working with the merchants there and the banks and continuing to build this product even better. That's something that almost on a daily basis we have interaction there. Continuing. So also a very long-term play.
So who would not just El Salvador, but who can use this? Who's using this today? Can I go out and use it? And what can you tell us about the end user, the demographics, how, and what that looks like 3, 5, 10 years from now?
Man, I love that question. So the first part, you can use it now. So everything I've already talked about, 100% live, everything works, 100% functional. Some of the larger merchants, at least in the US, literally right now, would be like Nordstrom, Baskin Robbins, Petco, Sheetz, GameStop, Regal Cinemas. So like fairly large national brands. You can use one of our apps that we created as a prototype app, or the Gemini app. So the Gemini Exchange, they have an app that's integrated with Flexa. You can use a variety of assets. We're covering more than 100 assets currently that you can use for spending. Any of those assets, you can literally go into the stores I just mentioned with those apps and spend any of those assets instantly right now in store. And there's a lot of people doing it. So I would say, so who's using it? I would say currently it's going to be more of the enthusiasts and people that are aware of this, that want to spend crypto in some way. And we're actually very, very surprisingly, Bitcoin is still the asset leading the way around spending in general, even above stable coins. So those are sort of the number two in the various flavors that we have, which is surprising, right? Because the popular narrative is that Bitcoin isn't for payments anymore, but we're clearly seeing the opposite, and that maybe it is, again, just interest and enthusiasm. So it's really driving it, which it could be. But another really cool thing, one of the neatest things, is that when you look at the spending habits, let's say, of where people are spending and the percentage, whether it's movie theater tickets or groceries or clothes or household items, right? If you kind of put a pie chart out, and me and the team, we've been now in payments for so long, we know what sort of a typical credit card or a debit card spend looks like. They're nearly identical. So what we're seeing from day one is that people are using crypto exactly the same way that they use everyday spending, which to us, I guess, maybe we expected, but seeing it, like when we looked at it, we're like, oh, wow, this is literally what people are doing. They're literally using this as a totally normal means of spending, to where it's almost, you can't even differentiate, which is exciting, right? It shows that like this is going to be a very real thing of people spending these assets. So where it sort of goes over the next 3-5 years, or what the users look like, it is 100% our intent to have it be you, me, and everyone else. You can't even tell the difference. This has all the potential to be very, very widespread and mainstream. And the interfaces are going to be so simple. Users aren't going to care. They're just going to pull out their phone. They're going to have whatever the asset is. They're going to spend it. And they might not even know it's crypto. They might not care it's crypto, but it will be working behind the scenes. And it's going to be hopefully 10% of the cost that we currently see. And that's something we could be super excited about, even though maybe people are front and center saying, oh, I'm actually spending crypto, or I'm doing this. There'll still be those, but I really do think it gets to this, this mainstream opportunity where the users are, everyday users like anyone else that you would see, just using their phone to, buy anything really.
I'm definitely going to check it out. We're talking about fees. How should we think about the fees, like the economics between the economics for AMP and the merchants, and then also how do the fees compare to, say, using a credit card? What do they look like today?
Yeah, so that's definitely the biggest selling point. So the first one is there's no fraud liability, which is very, very significant, up to the tune of something in the tens of billions of dollars in the US alone. So that cost already is very significant. But just as an acceptance cost, we basically have like an internal mandate. We're always going to come under interchange. So whatever that fee is, it varies across merchants. So the larger merchants have a lower rate, and then smaller ones have higher. They also have, not getting too deep into the weeds, but merchants have higher rates if you accept a card online, for instance. They call it card not present. And it literally costs more money to accept a credit card payment online than in a store, where if you're actually reading the physical chip, for instance. So the rate varies tremendously. With us, we just say it's lower than interchange. We always try to target 1% or lower. In fact, we're always below that. We're always below 1%. and we just try to get it as low as we can. And so it'll be a flat rate, doesn't vary across online or in store. We're going to try to make this as low as we can. And really, that's it. So it's really straightforward pricing, very easy to use. Again, on the merchant side, no other weird variants or other terms or other conditions. It's just really straightforward of no fraud guarantee, and then the lowest possible rate that you can accept payments at.
Great, it's time for another poll. Everyone's ready. How fast are transactions on the Flexa network? 11 seconds, 200 to 400 milliseconds, 4 minutes on average, except for Sundays when the network is more congested, or 10 minutes. Oh, no one's falling for my decoy. Oh, a couple of people are. Thank heavens. Okay. 82%, exactly 82% again, said 200 to 400 milliseconds. Tyler?
Well done. That is correct. So yeah, that's as close to instant as we can get. We advertise instant. It certainly feels like instant. We actually have a variety of ways of how, because Flexa does integrate with everything that's there. So there isn't really just one exact way of how Flexa will work all the time behind the scenes. And so there's a little bit of variance sometimes in the speed. But I will say the newest products that we've built, literally from the ground up, and one I can mention publicly, Incom, which we had announced. We built some really new technology with them, and there'll be a bunch of merchants now launching using this new product, and it is so fast. You barely can hear the sound of the scanner, and it's done. The receipt is already printing, and it's done. It really is a totally different experience, and that was actually with Bitcoin when I was testing with it. So it really does show how you can put together the decentralized technology, freedom of choice, whatever asset you want, permissionlessly access this network, earn all the fees in the network, and then just still work with this unsexy back-end centralized company to make this hybrid work so well. It really is working, and you can see the results there of like how you can blend this together and kind of get the best of both worlds in the experience.
So digging in a little bit more to the transactions themselves, a couple of things around, who puts up the collateral? Is it the merchant? Is it the buyer? And if the merchant, like when you pay using AMP, does the merchant convert the crypto immediately into fiat or a stable coin? What are some of the mechanics? And you don't have to get into every single detail, but I think it'd be interesting to understand at a high level how it works from that perspective.
Sure. So the first, I'll start at the end of that, which is, so any asset that comes in, AMP just sits as collateral behind the scenes. So it's basically backing those transactions. When they're received, we 99% of the time currently will just liquidate that for local currency, and then we deposit it into their bank account. And the idea there is, a merchant can now receive payments through Flexa. It looks identical, whether it's PayPal, whether it's Visa, whether it's whatever other payment method they might receive. So it's designed that way. So in working with the merchants, how do all of your other payments look? It's literally the same. Even when it comes to how Flexa goes about the transaction, there's no tax liability on the merchant. They don't have to consider custody. They don't have none of that stuff. It literally looks exactly the same to them as any other payment they would receive. And so that's very much by design. There's been lots of interest from small and medium businesses to say, well, can I just settle in USDC, or I actually want Bitcoin? Can I just get paid in Bitcoin natively? And we say, absolutely. So now all they need is some account where we route the crypto to, and we can absolutely do that. And so that's very native and sort of foundational to the network. We actually built it as a native acceptance first, like just from like a technology perspective. And that, sure, we're this centralized company, and very, very open and clear about that and how this all works, the network. But this is actually going to be a phenomenal way for you to receive Bitcoin natively or Ether natively, whatever asset you want. We absolutely facilitate that and we encourage it. It's great. So that will always be an option. It's likely going to remain more on the small and medium size only because merchants pay their employees in fiat until their operations and their suppliers until that might change. We could see, but we'll be wholeheartedly ready to basically whatever the merchant wants, we will have that for them, and we will gladly support any of that. Then on the who is staking this and who's participating, so I'd say it's a mix between just crypto enthusiasts in general. It's the same sort of people that are spending that want this technology to exist and want the utility of spending to exist. They're naturally the ones in. Then the wallets themselves are figuring out that wallets don't really have a business model at the face of it. So if you make a wallet, how are you really earning fees or revenue or sustainability? Where this provides a really nice business model of you can now open up payments for free to all of your users, and they have free payments. There's no exchange rate arbitrage. There's nothing else happening on the Flexa side. So it's free payments to all of your users, and then the wallet can earn all the fees from the transaction on the merchant side. So the wallets are participating, saying, well, we can make money on this, so this is a good deal for us. So those are the two larger groups, and then it's really everyone else in between. And we actually do see a really nice spectrum of lots of people, lots of sizes. It's considerably more distributed than we would have suspected. So it very much is like, a lot of people talk about decentralization and how it impacts different types of people, but like we've been really shocked of how broad it has been when we look at the various sizes and where they're, what addresses. I mean, we don't know the addresses, but there's lots of them and there's a lot more of them. And we haven't even started opening up the staking on, exchanges or other custodial staking. And when that starts to open up, we believe there's between, 2 and 3 million holders in custodial services currently that we're going to open up. And that's really just a scale piece. Ethereum, we're getting there close. We're getting there close. Can't have it overnight. And so obviously with the network growth and everything was faster than a lot of people thought. But so that's all coming. But for us, again, it's doing it safely, doing it securely. We absolutely don't want to try to push something up an L2 integration or something else that is not going to ultimately benefit everyone and be very, very, very safe. And so that's what's taking a little bit. That's coming. And then that'll be really exciting when that starts to open up and we can see even greater participation. We've even so far, what we've seen has been really exciting.
So I'm the kind of person, I like to actually see things physically, and perhaps there are others that feel the same. So I always ask the folks on with me to see what they can actually show people. If I share my screen, or maybe you want to hold up your phone, what can you actually show the audience?
I will try to do the latter.
Okay.
Live demos are always a little dicey, but I'm going to give this a shot. So I have one of my wallets here, which you could probably see. The lighting isn't the best, but there we go. Yep. So I have some Bitcoin in this wallet, and I can just tap that spend button, and then it will start showing the list of merchants here, right, that I could then select from. And then if I pick one, it'll then generate this code, and then all I'd have to do is scan with this, and it will work. So this code right here is now unique to me. I can go into, I'd use the Baskin-Robbins store, and I can scan this, and it would pay whatever the bill is. And that's actually literally all it is. The demo actually isn't that exciting because it's only the one tap and that's it, right? Like, and then when it's done, it's done. There's nothing more to do. So I would have just literally paid with Bitcoin there instantly at the Baskin-Robbins or some ice cream or coffee or whatever. And that's it. And it will work at all. It is by design. I'm sure there's some edge cases somewhere, but it's by design every single location that they have in the United States. So it is super cool. That's it. It's like really that straightforward and simple.
So after this, my colleagues and I, we could all go down the street to the Baskin-Robbins and use some of the various cryptocurrency we own to buy ice cream.
Mhm. I mean, why aren't you doing it is, I think, the more of the question.
Touche. Touche.
And then you could stake AMP, and then you'd be able to earn, all of the fees back. So you're earning the fees for the transaction too.
Yeah. Okay, so zooming out, again, going back to AMP, putting things into context, maybe some people that are listening are starting to learn about cryptocurrency and they're familiar with Bitcoin, they're familiar with Ethereum. How do we think about AMP in the context of those tokens? What's the difference? What makes it unique? How are they similar? It's always helpful to think about different protocols, different cryptocurrencies and the underlying tokens in the context, of the ones we've been talking about for a while.
So yeah, the first part is that so AMP being just a ERC20 token or a compatible token, it only has the one purpose, right? As a collateral token. So starting there, that already is very different from other types of assets. So something like Bitcoin, the largest decentralized network in the world. Some people view it as a payment instrument on this network. Some people view it as a store of value. Somewhere it's in between. So it's a little bit kind of like what the narrative is, and almost like kind of your choice of deciding how you want to use this or how you want to interact with that decentralized network. Ethereum is a little bit of the same in that it's a token that's used to basically use the Ethereum network. So get computing power and store data in blocks on the Ethereum blockchain. So if you want to interact with a dApp on Ethereum, you need to pay Ether. So that's interesting, and that opens up some money-like qualities to Ether. But then it's got pure sort of utility features as well. Some people look at it as store of value, and that in particularly gets super interesting. I'm not going into too much detail as we migrate to the proof of stake network or consensus in Ethereum. People are already starting to say, wow, these look more like bonds, and that you can stake Ether and get this return in like a guaranteed inflation rate. And so there's all different perceptions of what those assets can do and how people might interact with them from a use and a financial incentive. AMP is, again, much more simple. It's a token that you can stake, and then you're basically risking your token in this exact kind of venue, and then you'll earn the returns generated from that risk. One thing I would add is, even though it's not currently employed on the current collateral contract, the AMP, I mentioned earlier that I said AMP is a ERC20 compatible token. It's actually not strictly an ERC20 token, also very, very much by design. It has some other features that we took quite a while building out. It's basically a partition system that will allow a user to stake AMP tokens without needing to send them into a contract. So you can basically hold them. So it's similar to how certain tokens would have where you can delegate governance. So I can basically let other people vote my tokens on some protocol or some proposal. We have a similar mechanism, although it's different, very, very different technically, that would allow you to basically stake your tokens without them needing to get sent. And so what that does, again, that's very much the eye towards universal, like widespread usage. When you think about simple, boring things around accounting and be able to see where my tokens are and what balances I have, if you go to Etherscan, you won't see those tokens because they're in another contract. And sure, you can read and use other tools like Zapper and others to see that the tokens are still assigned to. They clearly are. But it's not really that transparent. And that's another kind of step in the road to us around mainstream adoption of having to explain that, or, well, they're your tokens, but you just have the access to take them out of this contract. They're not showing up in your balance anymore. But rather than just saying, no, they're there. All the functionality will work the same. You can see them there. They can get audited. You could, from a financial accounting perspective, see what's going in there, how you account for this. It's very, very simple. So we did that. And so that is also a fully baked technology in the token itself. And anyone could actually create a collateral manager to utilize that functionality if people would like. And so that's again, mutable in the token contract. That all exists. People can use the other partitions to use exactly that feature if people would like. And that was, again, practicality, ease of use, and then also security. You hear a lot about people sending tokens to the wrong contracts or granting approvals to contracts that maybe they shouldn't be doing. That you won't have to do anymore. So
I've done
these
that.
are things, yeah.
Definitely done that.
Yeah, so we took it head on of like, what are all the things that are really holding some of this back to get it really, really, really big? And that's all open source too. So if other tokens wanted to, clearly it's open source, it's on the public blockchain. And if other people wanted to use that tech, that's wide open and there for others to use too. So if other ERC20 tokens wanted that sort of a functionality, it'd be amazing if others start implementing it, because then it starts getting more universal. And that was also why we worked with consensus early on, is that we just have this mentality of don't just build things in isolation, build them across the community, make sure we're building things that people will use, they'll understand, getting other smart people to interact and work on things rather than us just creating something and then you're releasing it. So it's this very iterative, thought out process of involving what we feel is like some of the best people in the industry, getting all these opinions. Even when we launched the token, we went through 2 full audits and 30 days worth of full testing. And, and thankfully we didn't find anything wrong, but like, those are the things we just feel like it's a financial responsibility to everyone in the ecosystem to take this very, very seriously. And there will be bugs and there are going to be mistakes, but a lot of them can be avoided, and having the right mindset of doing this for the respect of everyone involved and the users, interacting with your stuff. Losing money is not funny, and that's not, in fact, our whole existence is to save people money. So if we're not doing it with that right attitude from the beginning, so sometimes we're a little slower in talking about some things and getting them where they need to be, but that's generally why. and we're not trying to get everything perfect, right? The perfect is not the enemy of done. We are definitely not that, but we just need certain thresholds and certain quality metrics that we're always striving for.
That's great to hear. So what, notwithstanding any kind of material, non-public information, are there any exciting updates that you can share with us on the call today?
Yeah, I'd say there's one in particular, which is the timing worked out really well. We have been, from day one, we always talk about how, and throughout my kind of description, any wallet, any asset, any point of sale, any merchant, globally, right? And that's very much the ethos, and that is the vision that we have not deviated from. We boiled it down even shorter, like kind of this little bit of this rallying call of any asset, any app, any merchant. And that is like kind of our direct focus. And so we got to over 100 assets recently, which now set, I believe, the most assets spendable on any like digital network in existence. So it's not any, but it's pretty good, and that's the best or the most, and it's only going to increase. So we kind of check that box a little. And so we have an SDK that allows any app to now integrate into Flexa, but there was always more challenges around a non-custodial wallet or certain types of assets or certain wallets or app applications. We wanted to move through that even faster. And so we basically created ways to expand the network to let any app truly access the network right out of the box. And they can just pay directly from really any app. And so that will be, we're announcing it fully next week, actually. And so all the details and what that's going to look like and how people can get access to it. But that's the really cool thing, is that we've been working on that for a long time. And the really cool thing is that a lot of the learnings of how we could actually do that came from the El Salvador product. And we learned how to do this openly on the Lightning Network with Bitcoin, and taking transactions that were from fully non-custodial sources that we didn't have any of this other information on. So it's interesting how everything kind of ties together, and we learned from that. And we said, well, wait a second, we did this, and we built a system where it's really interesting. Normally, when you're staking a wallet to submit valid transactions to the chain or to the mempool, what we did was we created the system where you're actually staking the node on a layer 2 to write the transaction back to the main chain. And we called that a transformer because we like the electricity and the amp and we're nerds and we really like the analogy there. And it actually truly fits. So you're staking like a node that's writing a transaction back publicly. And so in staking that service, it actually applies more universally now to any chain, any layer 1, any layer 2. And so that's what we now deployed. And so we'll be launching that now across more than 10 networks very soon. It will be all the details coming. That is going to be our checkbox of the any wallet. And it's very real. So literally any wallet in the world will now be able to use Flexa right out of the gate, which is really moving us down the field, we think, in terms of real adoption here. And then that now will lead to the last piece, which we're constantly working on. But really exciting movement on that that we could share. So.
And that's really exciting. And I know one of my questions for you before we start to wrap up, because we do have, I would say, no less than like 80 questions, a lot of different explanations of support and joy, at least one marriage proposal for you so far in the chat. What are you most excited about today? And what's your big vision for the future?
So I'd say, so the vision, that's easy because we already talked about it. That's totally the same. And that I truly believe this can happen. Someone is going to do it. I think we're farthest ahead. I think we have a really, really great opportunity to do it. But this is happening. It's inevitable. The cost savings are so dramatic. The interest we're seeing from every single party involved is so massive. This is getting done, and it's going to get done well. And within the next 5 or 10 years, there is going to be some sort of a network like this at very meaningful volume compared to the other existing networks. And I would say that with zero doubt whatsoever. And I feel confident it can be Flexa, and I hope it is. And I will be working very, very hard with everything I have to make that happen. And the team, I can assure you, the founding team and all of the entire team, this is why we're here. So that one's easy. What am I most excited about? I'd say more generally, I hinted a little bit around some of the growth of the technology. When you look at people sort of, I think, forget that in these sorts of networks with everything being decentralized or not everything, but many things, and open source, the technology grows way faster than anything we're like at all accommodated to. So I've been looking at various metrics around the growth of Bitcoin relative to the internet, and there's lots of comparisons, and it actually generally the Bitcoin is growing faster than the internet itself in terms of users or transactions. It's not exactly apples to apples, but similar. And then Ethereum is growing at 10 times the rate of Bitcoin is. And the reason is you have just so many different types of tools and software and governance that's all open source that anyone can now use, and you build on top of each other. And the amount that I've seen over the past year or 2 years is there's no way I could have predicted any of that. And it's so fast where I can't even, sometimes people, what will it look like next year? I don't even know anymore because there's so many new ideas and there's so much getting created that the rate of growth and sort of innovation in our little world is mind-boggling. And so that's what I'm most excited for, of almost just being surprised of what is this going to look like a year from now. 5 years, it's impossible, completely impossible to even, I really can't. I can't even wager a guess. And being at the forefront of something like that, also while being like in the first inning of this game, and we're so incredibly early, like we're barely getting started, and getting to like, it's almost like feeling it's like this infinite cave and you have this little light that you can only see a little bit. And like that, I think is what's most exciting. Like for sure, that gets me up all the time knowing what this is going to look like, all the new technologies, and we're going to be front and center working with them. They're going to be a part of Flexa in so many different ways. And I mean, how can you not be excited about that, right? Getting to do something that you love, getting to be challenged, again, have a great team and, a lot of people, great communities around like that. That's cool.
Hearing you speak has been exciting, inspiring, humbling. I absolutely agree. So let's look at some of the questions that have come in. We only have time for a few. But again, if people do want to reach out to us, you can write us. info@grayscale.com is our email address. What tokens or protocols does Amper Flexa compete with? So what do you consider your competitors? Someone asked about the Rune, Thorchain's Rune. How do you think about that?
I would say that there are competitors everywhere within the bigger spectrum of payments, but I would very honestly say that there aren't any protocols or tokens or anything that competes with what Flexa is doing. We're fundamentally very, very different things. We're building an acceptance network for any asset, any wallet to use, right? Any protocol, we don't actually care. So all of those things can come into Flexa. We're like a payments pipe. And the thing that we do best, that's very hard, that's very boring, but the best thing we do is all the integrations. So all of the hardware and software that we dig into and work with at the merchant level, that's really what we do. That's like what Flexa is. And so that's not a layer one protocol or a token. So it's just very fundamentally different. There might be other protocols trying to just do like native payments using different types of hardware or something like that. And we would very openly say, just use Flexa. It's free. We already have the integrations. Just throw us an API and you're good. And we'll let you literally be live at every store that we have, and we don't make any money on it. It's totally free. So if people, I would very honestly say, if you think you're competing with us there, just use our stuff. It's free and it's all right there to get all the acceptance, and it's literally right there for you. So we're not a consumer company. So if you have users or you have a wallet or you have things, you're not a competitor by nature to what Flexa is doing.
What is the most unexpected part of the digital business payments that you've encountered while creating Flexa?
It was the most interesting part, it said?
The most unexpected part of the digital payments ecosystem that you've encountered while creating and leading the Flexa team.
That is a good question. I guess I would say there's a lot more enthusiasm at the corporate level than I would have expected. So there was, starting off, considerable more interest and awareness of why something like Flexa needs to exist than I really expected early on. So that was something that was, really appreciated too. And that we weren't really ever talking to people that had no interest. There was, surprisingly, for a really large 100-year-old plus merchant at times, them having like genuine enthusiasm to work with something like this and understanding it. And then some of them starting to understand, going into tangents of what this all looks like. So, a great example that we talked about very early on is, wow, if you're a merchant and you're running a loyalty program, you can literally just send coupons and loyalty points to your customers' wallets instantly. You know the address that they just used. This is like literally the marketing tool of the century for you to literally inject value or tokens or something into their wallet. That's never been possible before. And some merchants will get that. And we talk about that. And we talk about what this can look like either through Flexa or something totally separate, or working with some other project or other technology to bring some of that to life. Because for us, we're about spending no matter where it comes from. So whatever the project is, no matter the asset, the wallet, the project, like, we're supportive of all of it. So I think that would be the most unexpected. I thought it was going to be a lot more challenging for some of the acceptance around this. And there certainly are many, many challenges. As we all know, we're based in New York. We're a token network. We have, all the various licenses to do what we do legally throughout the states we operate in. So that is a big, big, big challenge with lots of other hurdles and costs and everything else. But I probably would have expected a little bit more resistance, or I don't want to know about that. or that's not interesting to me. And it's actually been quite the opposite, where there's been a nice appetite for, this is interesting. How do we participate, and how can we, make this meaningful?
Does Grayscale have an AMP product, and questions about getting exposure to AMP and Flexa in IRAs? Yes, our DeFi fund has AMP in it. Please feel free to check it out on our website or reach out to us. And yes, our private placements and the public quotations for other products are available through certain tax advantaged accounts. Definitely ask your IRA provider about the products. I think we'll take one more question quickly to reiterate the use case. And we've covered this, but I think this is really important. What is the use case for the average individual investor like me? How do I interact with this, with Flexa, with AMP? I think we'll leave everybody with that one.
Okay, I will, if it's all right, I'm going to segment that into the ordinary person and then maybe an ordinary developer type person.
Okay.
So if you
wanted an extraordinary
to,
person.
Yeah, honestly, a lot of stuff's on GitHub. You'd be surprised. Everything's open source. You could, fire some of this up a lot more quickly. But so let's say you just like a token. Let's say you like Litecoin. You can just go make a Litecoin wallet yourself in whatever you'd like, and then you could stake AMP onto Flexa, and you could literally use the brand new wallet that you just created for yourself to go spend Litecoin at these merchants like instantly. So now there's that utility of an ordinary person of just literally creating a product for yourself. You could have other people use it, and then you could actually earn the fees that they generate. So there's even some financial incentive potentially, but there's that use case. Or the secondary one is wanting to participate in a network like this and realizing how big these other payment networks can get, and staking these networks and providing spending capacity in them, and then now getting to share a part of all the spending that you generate, basically. And so rather than, if you are using one of the legacy card networks, right, as a participant, you could get some cash back maybe, or some other benefits there, or you could actually get some of all of the fees that you generate. And so you get to now have all the upside of the activity that you're bringing to the network. And so that's just even philosophical of, hey, I'm doing this already, I'm spending already, I can now benefit in a much greater way by participating now. And by staking my tokens, I can earn substantially more, and I'm the one participating in this network. And so that would be, I guess, the second use case, or for a normal person, I guess.
Well, I think a lot of people would find that very compelling. We do have to remind everybody that nothing we say here is investment advice. People should do their research. They should talk to their brokers. And we do have to wrap up. Thank you so much, Tyler, for taking time to join us today. And thank you, everybody, for dialing in. This has been a really great discussion. And I hope that everybody has a great rest of their day.
All right. Thanks, Ray. I really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone, for joining.
Bye. Thank you.
Token stake, looks like a bull flag. I'm diamond hands, man. Candles on the rise and I just got paid. Gemini, limit order, this is the way. DCA on the dip, hodl on the crash. Never sell at a loss, never click on the spam. No fun, pure bull, what the hell you gon' do? Empire on the rise, cause FOMO is a no-no. When Lambo to the moon. Amp token, what the hell you gon' do? When Lambo to the moon. What the hell you gon' do? Got my swag on, tipping the hat low. Download the Spalding app, up to Pecco I go. Bitcoin, Dogecoin, Litecoin, and more. Over 41,000 spendable stores. Read that white paper, and now I'm in the know. Studied the Flexa team, and then I bought some mo. Was from the block then, now on the blockchain. Spitting ether and I'm buying it. Amp gang. SDK, Shopify, and a high APY. Make no mistake, not financial advice. Lambo to the moon. Amp token, what the hell you gon' do? When Lambo to the moon. Amp token, what the hell you gon' do? It's the end of the fiat, decentralized era. Satoshi Nakamoto, all coins, so I dare ya to airdrop me. You can't stop me. Flexa, consensus, a DeFi monopoly. All-time high, end of inflation, legal compliance, adoption by nations. A shout out to the Facebook Amp Token Group family. Your keys, your crypto. Empire.